The chair lays out on third reading House Bill 366. The clerk will read the bill.
HB number 366 by Phelan, relating to required disclosures on certain political advertising that contains altered media, creating a criminal offense.
The chair recognizes Mr. Phelan to explain the bill.
Mr. Speaker,
Mr. Tinderholt, for what purpose?
will the gentleman yield for questions?
Will the gentleman yield for questions?
I will yield for questions.
The
Sure.
gentleman yields.
Thank you. Representative Phelan, this bill is numbered House Bill 366, that's correct?
Yes, sir. That's correct.
And I'm seeing it was filed on February 27th of 2025. Is that also correct?
That sounds correct. Yes, sir.
House Bill 365 in front of it and 367 behind it were filed on November 12th of 2004. Were you Speaker of the House on November 12th of 2024?
I sure was, sir.
Why did you save bill number 366 for this bill that you filed 4 months later?
Well, I reserved 366 for a piece of legislation. It just happened to be this piece of legislation.
Did you consider doing any other bills in the spot for 366?
I can't recall. I had so many bills in Ledge Council that this was one of the first ones that was ready. Yes, sir.
I'm looking at the race for House District 21, and apparently the election night returns had you winning by the runoff by 366 votes. Is there any correlation between the House bill number of 366 and winning by 366 votes?
There might be. That's a heck of a correlation you made there. But I will say the official vote was 386.
Okay. And so why did you choose this bill about political speech after your margin of victory in the primary?
I actually have about 5 bills dealing with ethics reform and the Ethics Commission and disclosures. I felt it was time that the legislature address those. They're not fun topics, and it's something that is near and dear to my heart. The integrity of elections. This bill is not about me, Mr. Tinderholt. This bill is not about you. This bill is not about anybody in the House floor. This bill and other bills I hope to bring to the House floor. I have 2 tomorrow that I'm sure you're going to love as well. It's about the integrity of our elections and what the voters see on whether it's media or mail, and we know that AI. This would be probably the 5th bill that we vote off on the House floor dealing with AI. So it's obviously something that is infiltrating different aspects of our lives.
Did you consider whether using your margin of victory as the bill number might make the bill look like a personal vendetta versus a true mission to try to change the election process?
A personal vendetta against whom, sir?
I don't know.
I know you asked the questions, but it was a number that I appreciate my voters sending me back on.
Members, reminder not to impugn the motives of the member.
Yeah.
Would you agree that laws targeting...
It's simply a bill number.
Would you agree that laws targeting speech should be written objectively and not emotionally?
Sir, there's not a bill I've ever had on this House floor that I'm emotional about.
I just find it ironic that it's 366, and that was the first number that came out for the election numbers. I understand they changed, but I just find it very ironic. Thank you.
There's nothing ironic about it.
Mr. Speaker,
Ms. Luther, for what purpose?
does the gentleman yield for questions?
Will the gentleman yield for
I
questions?
certainly yield for questions. Yes,
Gentleman
ma'am.
yields.
Thank you. And so this bill is a Class A misdemeanor.
That is correct.
So what are the consequences for this? Could you explain that to me?
Well, you would have to, of course, it would go to the district attorney's office, and a Class A misdemeanor is, let me see if I have the actual penalties in front of me.
Excuse me.
Yeah, it's up to a year in jail. Yes, ma'am.
So up to a year in jail.
Correct.
I've been to jail for 3 days for working. Do you think that that's a fair punishment for someone creating an image or a meme?
Well, it's a very serious offense.
Up to a year in jail, sir.
Well, we could do a civil fine, correct? And as of right now, well, going into session, there's 750 cases totaling $3.6 million in uncollected fines. So fining someone $500 in a campaign that could be $5 million, $10 million, correct? A $500 fine is a cost of doing business in an election. But if someone were to commit an offense of this nature, it would certainly get their attention
So
and
you're
hopefully
saying
prevent them from doing it.
you think a year in jail for making a cartoon
You-
is that matches the offense?
It will be probation. You and I both know that. This
No,
would
I
result in
don't.
probation.
It literally says in your because I personally have dealt with judges who take a personal vendetta against you and make you an example. I have actually lived that my whole life for working. For working, I got thrown in jail. So I'm asking you, if someone creates a cartoon, they could go to jail for a year. That's
So-
what you're saying in your bill.
Now, what I'm saying is, and by the way, your circumstances and your confinement has nothing to do with this piece of legislation.
No, I'm talking about if the punishment matches the offense. I can talk about that all day long, sir.
Well, and that's, yes, your prerogative. This is a deterrent in using fake or altered media to drastically change the outcome of an election.
And
I think that's a serious offense, and it should be taken serious. I'm not taking this lightly at all.
So you don't think there's been political satire it's been a tradition in America for a long time.
Absolutely.
And if
it
someone's
will
not-
continue. It will
and-
continue.
Right. So now that you have this bill, you're expecting that to completely stop.
No.
And then if you're in an
No.
area like Dallas,
No.
they'll say, we're going to put you in jail for, we have J6ers that are in jail for doing nothing.
This has nothing to do with January 6th. I'm sure
No,
you would...
I am comparing the offense to the punishment.
Okay, that's fine. This bill applies to individuals whose political speech is currently being regulated by the state of Texas, either through statute or through rule of the Texas Ethics Commission. The persons, line 10 through 18, are already required to have disclosures. They have to have political ad paid for by. That's the same universe that is currently being regulated, that is being regulated in this bill. No new individual, no new person is being brought in to HB366. I know that's the narrative out there on Twitter or social media. It is not accurate. This is the same universe that is being regulated currently that will be regulated under 366. All you have to do is disclose that you are lying to the public with your media. That video has been altered. It did not occur in reality. And that's all you have to do is disclose it, just like you disclose political ad paid for by.
So the first night that I was in jail, everyone looking at me, they said, why are you here? And I said, I was working. And can you imagine someone going to jail for a year and they say, what are you in here for? And they say, I drew a cartoon.
Well, it wouldn't apply to them unless they are currently also not following the law.
I will not be voting for this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Mr. Speaker,
Mr. Schatzline, for what purpose?
would the gentleman yield for some questions?
The gentleman yield for questions.
Of course I will.
Gentleman yields.
Representative, are you familiar with strict scrutiny?
I can't hear you. Say that again.
Are you familiar with strict scrutiny?
You can enlighten me.
It's the standard by which courts review government regulations on speech. It requires the government to have a compelling interest and for the bill to be narrowly tailored. What is the compelling interest here?
Again, we have been regulating political advertising since before I was born. This has been going on for decades. This is nothing different than we currently do with political advertising. You as a candidate office holder have to put political ad paid for by when you enter this political advertising arena, and all this does is ask you or tells you to add in a disclosure that you are using altered media.
So if a law burdens more speech than necessary, would you agree that it is unconstitutional?
Absolutely. This is regulated speech that we've been doing for decades. It is no different.
Did you consult with a constitutional lawyer before drafting this bill?
I actually did consult with several attorneys. Yes, sir.
Were you aware that courts have consistently struck down vague or overly broad speech regulations?
I don't think they applied to this bill, sir.
I want to reiterate another question that's been asked because I think it's important. So is it your goal to put someone in jail for political speech because that's what this bill would do?
It is my goal to prevent someone from impacting or altering an election by using fake media that never occurred in reality, be it AI or deep fakes. And we saw the chilling effect it had this past cycle. We see it every day, whether it's President Trump or former President Biden, where their voice and their likeness is, you cannot distinguish between reality and this new technology. You can't tell the difference.
So we know that this law is going to be abused to put people in jail for political speech. Is it your intent to limit grassroots organizations from criticizing their elected officials?
This does not apply to grassroots organizations, sir. Again, 1, 2, and 3, Section 255.0015, 1, 2, and 3. You have to satisfy those requirements to be in this bill. And if you are 1, 2, or 3 in this bill, you're already required to put political ad paid for by. You already have regulations on your political advertising speech.
Representative,
That is the current law as we sit here
This is going
today.
to end up with people in jail for political
will
speech.
not.
I am going to oppose, and I hope
It will
everyone else
not.
does too.
Thank you, but it will not.
Mr. Speaker,
Mr. Olcott, for what purpose?
does the gentleman yield for a question?
Will the gentleman yield for questions?
Absolutely.
The gentleman
Thank you.
yields.
Is it true, Representative Phelan, that when you laid this bill out in committee, that initially Texas Public Policy Foundation supported your bill?
That is my understanding, yes, sir.
Is it true that they later recanted that bill and retracted it?
To my knowledge, they were in my office this week supporting the bill, sir. That is my knowledge.
That's interesting, because I was told this was the statement that I had been informed that they read after coming out in support. They recanted it and said, while we appreciate the efforts of Senate Bill 893 and House Bill 366 to ensure the integrity of our elections, Texas Public Policy Foundation's testimony did not adequately reflect the concerns we have with the current language or go far enough in specifying the precise conditions under which we would ultimately support the bills. We look forward to working with the bill authors and committee members to make the necessary changes that would accomplish the goal of protecting voters and the integrity of our elections. Have you made the changes that they recommended?
Were they speaking to the file version or the committee substitute?
That was a statement they actually just issued. I believe that was a public statement.
Well, you say that. I don't know if you're accurate or not, but
Okay. You're not aware of that statement then?
I'm not
sir?
aware of that statement, but I do know after that hearing, the committee substitute addressed the concerns brought up in committee.
But you have not, have you discussed any of these changes with Texas Public Policy Foundation, the ones that they brought up?
Sir, I have not had any conversations with Texas Public Policy Foundation this session, period. When they supported the bill, it was when they walked in and testified in favor of the bill. I did not talk to him prior to filing the bill, and I have not talked to him since the committee substitute's been laid out and voted out of committee.
But you're going on record here saying that Texas Public Policy Foundation currently supports your bill.
I don't know, sir. I don't know. You say they don't. I can tell you no one testified against the bill, and no one's come to my office opposing the bill since the committee substitute's been voted out. Zero, not one person.
Okay. Well, apparently they have changed their mind, and they were looking to work with you, but apparently you didn't want to. So, but yeah, I'll be voting against the bill. Thank you, sir.
That statement is your statement. I will call Texas Public Policy Foundation when we get off the floor, though.
Mr. Speaker,
Mr. Money, for what purpose?
will the gentleman yield for a few questions?
Will the gentleman yield
Sure.
for questions?
Representative Phelan, can you identify some of the specific types of political advertising that you think would be a crime under this bill?
Well, again, if you knowingly, with the intent to publish through broadcast political advertising, including an image, an audio recording, or video recording of an office holder or candidate's appearance, speech, or conduct that did not occur in reality.
Okay, so last election cycle, you and various PACs directed by you spent quite a bit of money in Republican primary elections that published, distributed, and broadcasted political advertising. Is that correct?
I donated money to individuals. I
And-
was not involved in the creation of media or the mail or the radio and TV. I did not get involved in that, no, sir.
But
No more than when you give a donation to a candidate, you get involved.
Sure. And the kinds of political advertisements that we're told are concerning are maybe a picture that didn't happen in reality, such as I think a famous picture is of you hugging Nancy Pelosi, and you've never hugged Nancy Pelosi. Is that correct?
I've never been in the same zip code as Nancy Pelosi.
Me neither, and I don't think you would hug her, but there was a picture of you hugging her that would violate this rule. Is that correct?
It would certainly require disclosure that image did not occur in reality. That's it. That's all it would take.
And if someone published that picture without publishing that disclosure, they and any broadcast company, social media site that broadcasted that would be subject to both civil and criminal penalties. Is that correct?
No, sir. I don't think you've read the bill, because if you go to page 2, it certainly carves out all those individuals who would have been liable for publishing any type of media.
Okay, I'll move on then. So last cycle, if there's a PAC that you donated heavily to that sent a political mailer to my district showing a picture of me next to Xi Jinping with the Chinese flag superimposed on farmland, falsely claiming that I helped to sell farmland to the Chinese Communist Party, that would be a crime under this bill, correct?
Are you sure you're not talking about my election with that piece of mail was sent?
Hey, I think maybe there's probably more of us than just one that got that, but that would be a crime.
I definitely got that one. Yes,
okay.
Sir. But you're correct. That would fall under this disclosure that I did not meet that individual. I never shook his hand, and a disclosure saying this did not occur in reality would have to be included on that piece of mail, just like in my race and in your race. This is a equal opportunity disclosure bill here, sir.
Do you think voters in House District 21 believe that you actually did hug Nancy Pelosi?
You know, that's a great question. Yes. The same reason they came up to me and said, you know what, I don't think Donald Trump endorsed your opponent. That was some deep fake AI stuff. I was not quick to correct them and tell them, no, actually he did endorse my opponent, but they did not believe it was real because there's so much out there that's not real. So when things occur that are actually accurate, they also don't believe it. And that's the point of the bill, sir. Mr. Money, it's not about you and it's not about your election. And I'm sorry you had some mail you didn't like. I got mail I didn't like. This is about what your voters believe and what my voters believe. It's not about us. And you and I will just be a face on a composite in the basement one day, and we won't be remembered. But if we don't protect our elections, and if we don't do something about the integrity that our voters see on a daily basis, all this is not worth it. Because then you know what? Anybody could be up here. An image, a video of anybody could go run for election. You know what? I'm not the best looking man, right? I got a big forehead. I'd love for my forehead to be a little bit smaller, but that wouldn't be reality. I'd like to be 6'2". That wouldn't be reality, right? So let the voters know exactly what they're getting every time they go to the ballot box. So why anyone would want to operate in the shadows is beyond me.
I don't want to operate in the shadows.
Well, good. Vote for 366 and you won't be operating in the shadows. Put a disclosure on any mail piece you put out there that says, this is fake. I'm lying to you, voter.
But if someone makes your forehead...
Members, please don't talk over each other.
Let him finish his comment about my forehead, please.
No, I'm saying if I don't want anybody to make fun of my appearance either. You've got a nicer head of hair than I've got. But if someone makes your forehead larger than it should be, I don't think that they should be subject to jail time for that. This is an overreach. Nobody likes bad political advertisement. You don't, and I don't, and I get that. But that's part of what we have to live with. And when people overreach and they say that we've sold land to the Chinese Communist Party, they say we're affiliated with neo-Nazis and ridiculous comments like that, then that is what... Then we answer for it, and truth covers truth, and we move on.
This won't stop lies. People will lie about me. They're going to lie about you. They're going to lie about anybody who runs for office, whether it's local, state, federal. There always will be lies. The problem is we're getting to a point in time, again, this is the 5th bill we've heard on the House floor dealing with AI and new technology. We have to get ahead of it. We're always playing catch up to technology. When I first got elected, it was just the World Wide Web. It was Facebook. Now this is AI, right? On Monday, Senator Ted Cruz passed the Take It Down Act, 409-2. The federal government
That's
is
a
finally doing something.
different bill. Let's keep it about
It's
your
still
bill.
about AI, though. It's
Yeah.
still about AI
But
infiltrating our
we're
lives
talking
on a
about
daily
political
basis.
memes, and I appreciate it. And I don't like lies in political advertising as well, but this bill goes too far, and I'll vote against it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Mr. Speaker.
Yes, sir.
The gentleman's time has expired.
Mr. Speaker, may I make a motion to extend the time?
Members, you've heard the motion. Is there objection? Chair hears none. The gentleman's time is extended.
Thank you, Speaker Phelan.
Mr. Little, for what purpose?
This gentleman yield for
Will the
questions.
gentleman yield for questions?
Of course.
The gentleman yields.
Thank you, Speaker Phelan. The conversation got a little emotional. My questions are going to be a little more technical.
Sure.
Okay. So, Speaker Phelan, this morning I woke up and there was a meme on social media by the learned scholar Carnifex Maximus, and it has you in Soviet regalia, and it says you're harboring unauthorized memes. And obviously that wasn't you, right?
I hope not. No, sir.
Certainly not. So my understanding of your bill is that you are hoping to exclude or regulate memes like that if they are promulgated by a certain class of person. Isn't that what the bill does?
It is a narrower approach. Yes, sir. We're trying to stick within the boundaries of current law, and those who currently their speech is regulated because they fall in the category currently either through statute or rules that we regulate political advertising.
So you said earlier in your response to some of these questions that this isn't about us, but it seems to me that this is expressly about us. And the question of whether the members of this body should be subjected to ridicule, which aren't there really good reasons to ridicule the people in here?
100%. We sign up for this. I will say our families don't sign up for this. Our wives and children don't sign up for this, but we certainly enter this arena and we certainly sign up for it. I don't care about memes. I don't care if they're lame memes or funny memes. This has nothing to do with Twitter. This has to do with political advertising, which is a different threshold under statute and under TEC rule.
Well, Speaker Phelan, you said earlier that this isn't about the grassroots and it's not about memes, but I'm looking at Section A2 of your bill. And here's how I read this. Please correct me if you think I'm wrong. It says the section applies to a person who makes expenditures during a reporting period that in the aggregate exceed $100 for political advertising, other than an expense to cover the basic cost of hardware, messaging software, and bandwidth. And so a person in the grassroots could make expenditures in excess of $100 in a reporting period about something totally different than that meme, and they would be subjected to reporting under this section. Isn't that right?
Well, again, this mirrors current TEC rule under political advertising disclosures. That is current rule. Chapter 26.1, C2, subsection 2, is the exact same language. So if you spend over $100 in a reporting period in the aggregate that exceeds $100, for political advertising other than an expense to cover the basic cost of hardware, messaging software, and bandwidth, you have to put political ad paid for by on that messaging right now as we speak. So if they're not doing that now, they're not going to have to do the disclosure on AI.
I appreciate
or fake
I
media.
appreciate your response, Speaker Phelan, but that wasn't the question that I asked. My reading of this bill as a lawyer is that if I am a person who spends $100 or more during a reporting period for political advertising about anything, not about this meme, when I make a meme and I put it out, I've got to append a disclosure to it. I mean, isn't that right?
Well, I would think subsection B applies, correct?
Yeah, I mean, it's right, isn't it?
But
That if I've spent $100 on political advertising anywhere about anyone during any reporting period, I now have to append this disclosure to any piece of satire that I put out into the world. Am I, as a lawyer, reading this correctly? I think that I am.
well, I would think that a person with the intent to influence an election knowingly caused to be published, and through 19 through page 2, line 5, that would apply.
Everyone, Speaker Phelan, who uses satire, political satire, is trying to influence an election, aren't they?
I would, no, sir, I would push back on that. I would say the memes that were published last night, this morning, are not trying to influence my election, whether I return in HD 21 or not.
How do you know? How do you know whether Carnifex Maximus wants you to be reelected or not?
There is within TEC rules and the statutes about election for or against. That is not making fun of someone, joking around about with the meme is not necessarily influence an election at all.
Well,
it could just be a joke, an absolute joke.
I
Who
totally
cares?
agree, but my concern is if I have spent $100 or more, let's imagine I'm not in the House, if I have spent $100 or more in political advertising in any reporting period, I still have to make this disclosure, right?
You have to, according to the Texas Ethics Commission, again, their own rules, you have to put political ad paid for by on the bottom of a political advertising that is trying to influence an election if you spend more than $100 during any reporting period in the aggregate.
And the purpose, just to
That's,
be clear,
that's the current rule. I'm just adding another disclosure that says if you're using fake media to influence the election and you're knowingly publishing that, then you have to add that disclosure.
well, you've used the term fake media. Fake media doesn't appear in your bill.
Altered media.
Oh,
I'm sorry. I'm channeling my inner Donald Trump. I'm just saying, altered media.
I understand, but any type of altered image is going to require this disclosure if you're one of the categories of A1 through 3, right?
Well, correct. I do have an amendment that I would like to add on third reading that would exempt some of the media that you may be concerned about.
I'm sorry that I didn't know about your amendment, but let me ask you a couple more questions about your bill.
Sure.
So, in your original House bill that you filed, it was broader, and what you did in your committee substitute was you took out any internet service provider, any publisher, any social media site, so they wouldn't have liability, right? You excluded them.
That was part of the testimony in some of the stakeholder meetings, sir. Yes, sir.
But you excluded the big companies. You excluded Facebook, Meta, Google, YouTube. You excluded all of them from liability. But anyone who spends $100 on political advertising in a reporting period, we're okay with them being liable, right?
Well, they're not required to add political disclosures with or without this bill.
Well, my concern is, well, in your original bill, they were going to be liable for publishing it, right? And then in your committee substitute, you took them out.
They were not expressly omitted.
So, Speaker Phelan, a narrower question. The purpose of this bill is to regulate a kind of speech, right? That is the purpose.
The purpose of this bill is that our voters know exactly who they're voting for and whether or not an image they are seeing ever occurred in reality. Whereas a video of you shaking hands with Nancy Pelosi, your voters need to know you never met her, you never shook her hand. Images are very powerful. Quite often people don't even bother to read the verbiage or what's on paper or even what's on screen. The images are more powerful than the words.
Speaker Phelan, I agree they're very powerful. I had images that you paid for sent into my district of me between Joe Biden and Beto O'Rourke. And the question is, why is it okay for you to do it and it's not okay for the people out there to do it? What makes sense about that?
I don't know what was sent in your district. I just know what was sent in my district. And I know what was sent in other people's district. And it shouldn't be right. And again, this is the beginning, I think, of a new era in ethics where the voters need to know what is real and what is not. This AI technology gets better every single day. It gets more inexpensive, more reasonably every single day. It's going to become the norm. And quite frankly, my voters, again, if they can't tell that my opponent was endorsed by Donald Trump, which is a very valuable endorsement in our primary politics, when they don't even believe that, that's pretty eye-opening.
Speaker Phelan, it seems like you want a new era because you found out that when you live by the sword, you die by the sword.
Well, I didn't die by the sword.
Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Harrison, for what
Will the
purpose?
gentleman yield?
Will the gentleman yield for questions?
Of course.
The gentleman yields.
You mentioned just a couple questions regarding that last exchange. You talked about AI, and AI is certainly advancing at an exponential rate. There are benefits and there are risks associated with that. But I want to clarify, because in the context of this bill, both yourself and the other proponents of this bill constantly reference AI, and your bill does reference AI, but the bill is not scoped exclusively to AI, right? As in it is much broader. You are not simply trying to regulate speech that is generated by AI. Is that correct?
There are other elements of the bill. I will say that, if you're too narrow on use the word AI, there could be something in the interim, maybe next year, that is called something different and is just as powerful, just as misleading.
I just want to get at that because it's really,
Gentleman's time has expired.
Mr. Speaker,
Mr. Harrison, for what purpose?
move to extend time, please.
This motion requires unanimous consent. There is objection. Gentleman's time is not extended. The following amendment, the clerk will read the...
Are you?
The following amendment, the clerk will read the amendment.
Amendment by Phelan.
The chair recognizes Mr. Phelan to explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is a clarifying amendment. The last thing we want to do is bring in small tweaks, whether it be a change in the saturation, brightness, contrast, color, or any other superficial quality of an image or video. If you take a photo and the shadows are wrong, maybe there was a bug flying in your hair, and you want to remove that, that would not be subject. This is similar to language that was approved in the Senate in a version that's come over to the House as well, and it is acceptable to the author.
The question occurs on the adoption of the amendment. Is there amendments acceptable to the author? Is there objection? The chair hears none. The amendment is adopted. The following amendment, the clerk will read the amendment.
Amendment by Hopper.
The chair recognizes Mr. Hopper to explain his amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, this is a really simple amendment. The bill author actually said just from the dais a moment ago that this bill isn't about anybody on the House floor, and that's what this amendment affirms, is that we want to make crystal clear to everyone in Texas that we are not passing this bill to protect ourselves, and that's what this would ensure. I move adoption.
The chair recognizes Mr. Phelan in opposition to the amendment.
I appreciate where Mr. Hopper's heart is on this. It does make some sense, but again, this is not about us. Where did he go? This is about the voters. And if you have the luxury of spending many, many years here, like Ms. Thompson or Mr. Craddock, their elections should be applicable to this bill as well. So I don't see why we would carve ourselves out of this legislation. I think the voters in these 150 House districts deserve the same truth in advertising that HB366 provides for them. So I will be opposed to the amendment. Thank you.
The chair recognizes Mr. Hopper to close on his amendment.
Mr. Speaker.
Ms. Weiner, for what purpose?
Will the gentleman yield for some questions?
Will the gentleman yield for questions?
Yes.
The gentleman yields.
Representative Hopper, do you think it is wrong to lie to try and influence the outcome of an election?
I think it's wrong to lie at all times, but here's the deal. We have a system of government that affirms our right to free speech, and this body needs to make it very, very clear that this bill is not being put forward to protect a class of people who will use the system of government to silence political opponents. Many of the people in this room have been challengers that received just as insidious or more insidious of material, and the reality is that we have an electorate that's informed, and we already have platforms out there where people can talk. It is not the role of government to sit there and be a nanny state police force to decide. And here's the deal. The deal is we're just saying, hey, let's just make it really clear. We are not doing this law to protect ourselves, and that's what this amendment affirms.
Do you agree that it is reasonable for us to require that there be disclosures on political advertising? Like right now, under current Texas law, it has to say this ad paid for by.
Well, Ms. Sweeter,
Do you agree that that is legal and constitutional and a good use of state resources?
I would abolish the TEC tomorrow if I could, if that gives you an idea where I'm at.
So your position is free for all on all of this, let people actively mislead the public of the state of Texas with no regulatory oversight?
I think you're trying to twist me into taking a position that you know I don't believe.
Well, what would it be then? You just said you would eliminate the TEC and you don't support the current required political advertising disclosure.
No, I think we have a body here that has the entire political establishment and lobby behind them that is trying to ensure that anyone that would come against us in an election, that we can use the entire arm of government against them, but we're never going to use to see it the other way, to allow people to come into this body by basically fighting their way in and saying, hey, listen, I'm fighting for this. This is what I'm for. And the reality is this not the role of government to decide whether or not your little meme was a joke, was obviously comic. And I agree with the comments by Representative Little. If I'm a 501c4, I'm not a state GPAC, and I use a MailChimp account, that could force me to never be able to make a political cartoon. That's the outcome of this bill.
Representative Hopper, I think we're going to have to disagree on the reading of the bill. I would just ask you to consider that the people of Texas deserve to know the truth when they go to the ballot box.
Thank you. Move adoption.
Mr. Hopper sends up an amendment. The amendment is not acceptable to the author. A record vote has been requested. The clerk will ring the bell. Show Mr. Turner voting nay. Show Mr. Phelan voting nay. Show Ms. Jones voting nay. Show Mr. Schatzline voting aye. Show Ms. Fairley voting nay. Have all voted. There being 25 ayes, 112 nays, the amendment fails to adopt. Does any member wish to speak on, for, or against House Bill 366? The chair recognizes Mr. Schatzline in opposition to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I'm going to keep this incredibly brief. At the end of the day, we signed up to be scrutinized by our constituents when we do something that either goes against the will of the people or goes against their perception of what the will of the people is. We signed up for this. It is as simple as that. To throw someone in jail is to silence political speech. This is insanity that we would propose such a harsh penalty for simply expressing our displeasure of an elected official. This is anti-American. This is anti-Constitution. I hope that today you would recognize that this bill stands in the way of our constituents speaking the truth that they know to be true or having an opinion that we might not agree with.
Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Harrison, for what purpose?
Will the gentleman yield?
Will the gentleman yield?
I will in one moment.
Not at this time.
I'm asking you, for those of you who ran off of making sure that we keep this constitutional republic and make sure that people can have a voice so that they can speak up against the differences that they have with their elected officials, these grassroots organizations, I just have to bring up, what was said up here when I asked the question to Speaker Phelan was simply, are we going to see grassroots organizations thrown in jail as a result of this bill? And he referenced something that they already have to report. Well, that's true if they're a PAC, but what about the C4s? What about those that are doing the work, the public servants? Look, members, it was said up here that this is not about protecting politicians. I would challenge you, we're called to be public servants. And right now, the only thing that this bill serves is us. It is time to take a stand for the people and for free speech. I ask that you would vote no. And yes, I will yield for some questions.
Thank you. Very much appreciate you yielding.
Mr. Harrison, for what purpose?
The gentleman.
Will the gentleman yield for
yes,
questions?
I will.
The gentleman yields.
Thank you very much for yielding. I'm trying to get my head around this bill, and I appreciate your clarifying remarks, Representative Schatzline. As I read the bill correctly, are you reading the bill to also create a Class A misdemeanor, and is your understanding that a Class A misdemeanor is actually a crime that's punishable by up to a year in jail?
That is correct.
Okay. Do you believe that Americans should risk jail time for engaging in political speech?
I do not believe that jail time should even be on the table for political speech.
Yeah, I agree. And I can't remember if it was you who was engaging in the questions with the bill author, but did you hear the bill author just a minute ago say that he, and I quote, I wrote it down, "I don't care about memes." Did you hear the bill author say that? So I found that very interesting because, well, first of all, wouldn't you agree that memes are sort of a type, a subcategory of satire?
Absolutely, and I would also say that memes absolutely do play a role in elections. They do have an effect.
Right, and a necessary role. And isn't it also true that political satire has a very long tradition in not just our state, but in our country dating back to prior to our founding? Is that your understanding?
Even before our founding in other countries as well.
Right, and since the bill author says he doesn't care about any memes, I went through and looked through the bill again briefly. It's a short bill. I was unable to find any exception in the bill for satire, for memes, for parody, for obvious jokes. I'm really curious why it wasn't in the bill, but maybe I missed it. Do you find any exceptions for memes, which the bill author says he doesn't care about, in the bill?
I have read this bill fully, and I do not find that.
Yeah. Is it your understanding that this bill, instead of leaving a consequential decision, like, for example, what the disclaimer should say, what it should look like, are you aware that this bill hands the full authority to issue regulations which carry the force and effect of law to unelected bureaucrats at the TEC to determine the type and the manner and the size and the way in which these disclaimers are to be displayed? Are you aware of that? Is that correct?
That is my understanding.
Should we be leaving decisions like that to unelected bureaucrats?
Absolutely not.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I'm very concerned about that. A couple final questions then. If we have to choose, because in government we can never find perfect equilibrium on most issues, but if we have to decide here, shouldn't the default presumption in America to err on the side of protecting speech, not on the side of restricting speech?
Absolutely.
Do you believe this bill is a restriction on free speech?
I absolutely believe that.
Don't you think that it should be the voters, not politicians and bureaucrats, that should be the ultimate judge on what is protected, free speech or not?
Absolutely, I do.
And wouldn't you agree that regulating political speech based on whether a government bureaucrat determines something to be true or false is a hallmark of a totalitarian regime, not of a free people?
I completely agree.
Can you think of anything more important than protecting in the state of Texas than our First Amendment protections?
I cannot.
And in closing, are you aware that this bill, the fact that we are even debating this bill, has made national headlines from coast to coast? Do you agree with me that it is a disgrace, that we bring shame upon our body, that we are even deliberating such a measure in the state of Texas today?
I am aware, and I do agree with you.
I agree. Thank you for the answers.
Thank you, buddy. Mr. Speaker,
Mr. Raymond, for what purpose?
will the gentleman yield for a question?
Gentleman yield for questions.
Yes, I will.
Gentleman yields.
So what I would like to ask you, because I appreciate and agree with what the Speaker is doing with this bill. I do. I really wish that we would have less lying in campaigns and all that. I understand free speech. But for example, let's say some years from now, you're governor, right? Governor Nate Schatzline.
Has a nice ring to it.
So let's say you're governor, right? And you're running for re-election. And let's say, I don't know, I'm running against you, right? And I do a TV ad that shows you. It looks like you. It's generated by help with AI. And it shows you, and my ad says, Governor Nate Schatzline allowed all these illegal immigrants to come into the country, and it shows you standing there at the border doing this and saying, come on, hey, vénganse, come on, come on. And it's you. I mean, it's you, baby, because it's you. It looks like you, it sounds like you, it smells like you, right? Well, maybe not smell. But is that okay?
I think even more egregious things are being done right
now.
now.
But I'm asking you about that specifically. And let's say it's you and you're
Well, I think the question that you're asking is not relevant.
I'm just asking you a very specific example because I'm trying to be specific, okay?
Yes.
Is that okay? Governor Nate Schatzline is telling, hey, guys, come on, cross over illegally. It's okay. Come on. Oh, some of you look like, oh, you got guns, cartels. Come on, it's okay. And I'm doing this ad that says Governor Nate Schatzline is letting all these people come in illegally and these cartel members come in illegally. And I'm just asking you, fundamentally, are you okay with that?
No, and I appreciate the question.
Wait a minute, you're not okay
with
that?
No, I'll answer it. No, I'm going to answer it.
Okay.
I am obviously not going to say that I would desire to have that happen. However, I am willing to let people say lies about me. to protect free speech inside of our country, inside of our state.
But are you okay with that example? Would that be okay?
Oh, I would hate that ad.
So would you like for that not to be for someone not for me as your opponent not to be able to do that?
We cannot create
or
law
if
off
we do
our
or
preference.
if I do make that ad, at minimum that I put on there, hey, this Richard Raymond, I paid for it. It's not true. I made it up. Would that be okay?
So, Representative, what I would say is, even if you did that, I would not want you to spend a year in jail.
I'm asking you first and foremost, do you think you'd be okay with someone not being able to misrepresent and lie to the voters about Governor Nate Schatzline asking cartel members and people to come into this country legally standing there?
And it's a great question. People lie about me every day, and,
No,
and
well,
I'm sure about
and
you
I
as
wish
well.
they- I wish
I
they
do not
wouldn't.
think that merits a year in jail.
Say again?
I just don't think that merits a year in jail.
But you think it's illegal. You think it should be illegal.
I don't want to limit free speech.
Do you think the example, if you think it's okay, say, you know what, it's okay.
Here's what I'll say. I would err on the side of I would rather them be able to do that than to put them in jail for a year.
Can you see that if people did that, I'm a lot more likely, even as a Democrat, to get elected governor than you get reelected as a Republican governor if I've shown you in ads where you're asking cartel members and people to come in illegal. Can you see how that's a bit
I
that
think
kind of a lie
it's
would
easily
impact?
refutable.
Can you see that that would impact the outcome of the election in a significant way because we lied to the voters?
The question would be, do I think someone should spend a year in jail, and I don't.
Well, should they spend one day?
I don't think that they should go to jail. And ultimately, I don't believe that's our role as government. I think that we have to accept the fact that when you sign up to run for office, people can lie about you, they can tell the truth about you, or they can hold you accountable.
Well, I think it's about election integrity. It's about election integrity. And if the voters are deciding whether or not to vote on you based on something that's completely fabricated, that you're letting cartel members and you're encouraging cartel members and people to come into this country legally.
Gentleman's time has expired. The chair recognizes Mr. Capriglione to speak for the bill.
First, I want to thank Speaker Phelan for putting this bill out there and for changing the tone and helping everybody understand exactly what this bill does. I'm sure you've all seen on Twitter and other places as AI goes and expands the message and the inaccuracies of what this bill does. And so you can see today, right now, how artificial intelligence, generative AI, can be used to spread misinformation and disinformation, in this case, about a bill about itself. This bill is clear. It is not about the general public being able to create a meme. What this bill does is it requires a disclosure when a candidate, an office holder, someone attempting to influence the election is lying. They can still lie, of course, some always will, but all this bill does is require that disclosure. For those of us who have been paying attention and working on generative AI for a long time, it's not about when these lies can be spread or how accurate they can be. That can already happen today. I have seen just in the past year that the deception that can occur goes beyond anything we ever thought possible. Just a year ago, I would not have thought that you could create whole entire videos, change people's voices to try not only influence them, but steal their money. And so when I look at this bill, this is not a bill about serving us. This is about a bill so that we can serve the public, so that they can be better informed. Companies all over the world have already decided to disclose artificial intelligence, whether it's Google and Meta, and all we're saying is time for politicians to do that as well.
Will the gentleman yield for a question?
Will the gentleman yield for questions? Gentleman yields.
I hear your concern about generative AI. My question is this bill narrowly tailored to only deal with AI?
The bill, as it stands, is tailored to go and provide disclosure that the ad, whether it's video or image, is trying to deceive the public. And so I know a lot of times people have been saying, hey, is it okay for us to be able to lie? All this bill is saying is, should you have to tell the truth? And for once, we have a bill that says that, yeah, we have to be honest.
I want people to tell the truth.
And I don't understand, if I can just finish the
Sure.
question, Why? There are people who would oppose being forced to tell the truth. We already have ads everywhere having to disclose what we do. And the speaker mentioned it several times, that this is normal campaign disclosure. If you spend $100 or more in your campaign, you have to put on the bottom of it, political ad paid for by Brent money. Now, if you're using generative AI in an attempt to deceive not the candidate on the other side, but in an attempt to deceive the public, either it's because you're mailing 10,000 people or you're sending a broadcast commercial to 200,000, all this bill is saying is, tell the people that you're not being truthful. And I don't know how anybody can oppose that.
I absolutely want to tell the truth. I do tell the truth.
Well, I hope you absolutely want to, but I hope you do.
I will answer to God for every word that comes out of my mouth. I understand that. What I don't want is the Texas
God
Ethics
doesn't need a
Commission.
disclosure,
Wait
but
for me to finish
sometimes
my
when you have
question.
technology like this, you have to provide notice.
I don't want the Texas Ethics Commission to become a ministry of truth to decide whether or not something is true or not. I don't want something to decide.
If you remember in 1984, in the Ministry of Truth, that's where they created lies. But those lies were created by the politicians and the candidates and the office holders, and that's what this bill goes and ascribes the penalty to. The penalty is not to the general public. The benefit we're providing is to the public. And the only thing I hear, no offense, and with full respect, is you trying to defend the lies.
The benefit will be for the members of this body and for other politicians who, by the way...
I don't want to provide the politicians any more benefits. Let's provide the public the benefit.
The politicians are the ones that are going to get a mailer in their mailbox, pick up the phone and call their sheriff, pick up the phone and call their police chief.
I'm not worried about the politician. What I'm worried about is like...
Don't interrupt me, please.
Members, please do not speak over each other.
They're going to call their DA because politicians have the kind of power to do that. The guy in his basement creating a meme where he puts a rhinoceros horn on my face and calls me a rhino is the person who's going to be attacked here, not me. I've got a voice, I've got a platform, I've got the ability to stand up and say, no, that's not true. And the answer to lies is truth. The answer to lies...
And which is what a disclosure is, right? And so, and again, no offense, I don't really care about your feelings. I don't think the public does because you're a politician. What we're trying to say is that everybody can see this today. Everybody knows that almost everything, a lot of what they read is just not true. There's a lot of misinformation. There's a lot of lies being spread. Most content is being created by artificial generative intelligence. That's just the reality. And so what we're doing with this bill and with others that we have passed and are going to pass is provide the public that disclosure, to provide them the ability to know to the full extent that we can what is true and what is not. And I don't think anybody in this chamber opposes providing disclosure about what we're doing. So,
I'm just
anyway,
astonished that the people in this body would think that creating a criminal offense and putting the Texas Ethics Commission in charge of deciding what is true and what is not true cannot lead to enormous abuses and will lead to enormous abuses, and that's why this kind of law has not been in place before.
Well, it hasn't been in place because
we
generative
have free
AI
speech. Thank you.
Again, with due respect, the law hasn't been put in place because of generative AI being new. But anyway,
Mr. Little, for what purpose?
Does the gentleman yield for questions?
Will the gentleman yield for questions?
Chairman, help me figure
The
out
gentleman yields.
Thank you. Chairman, help me figure out if I'm reading this right. The first category, it says this section applies to a person, only to a person who is an office holder, candidate, or political committee. That's A1.
And spends money in a campaign.
No. That's not what it says.
Or spends money in a campaign.
Okay. There's three categories. I'm just dealing with category one. I think that if I'm an office holder and I retweet something else from someone else that falls into this category of an altered image, I think I'm guilty of a Class A misdemeanor. Don't you agree?
I think if you're an office holder or candidate holder, people consider you to be a leader, and you should probably not spread misinformation and disinformation.
So the answer to my question is yes, right?
I did not say that. I mean, the reality is that what your job is as a leader, and as you'll learn, is to go and to represent people, to go and pass legislation that helps the people, not your donors, not your contributors. First and foremost, we work for the people.
Chairman, that wasn't my question. If you can offer an answer to my question, I think it's going to matter to everyone in here. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they've already decided what they're going to do.
I think most people have.
Hold on a second.
Luckily.
Hold on a second. I think if I retweet an image from someone else, I'm guilty of a Class A misdemeanor because I'm an office holder.
Well, I hope that you do not retweet misinformation. I hope that you don't knowingly try and influence an election by lying.
It sounds like the answer to my question is yes.
I don't know what the retweet has to do with this bill. This talks about whether you're spending money, whether you're deliberately trying to influence an election by spreading, generating, and creating generative AI in order to manipulate the outcome.
It says a person may not, with the intent to influence an election, knowingly cause to be published, distributed, or broadcast. So I think if I'm
you
using...
know, well, I mean, you
I'm
answered
sorry,
the
I wasn't
question.
done with my question.
So
Chairman,
you caught yourself.
Chairman, I wasn't done with my question. Mr. Speaker,
Mr. Little, for what purpose?
does the gentleman yield for questions?
Yes.
The gentleman has yielded for questions.
Isn't it true that if I am an office holder and I cause something to be published or republished from someone else, then I'm guilty of a Class A misdemeanor?
Well, I heard you pause for a second when you said the word that mattered, which was knowingly. So yes, if you are knowingly spreading disinformation, you are culpable. And that's true for a lot of other things, knowledge and intent. And since we've had this conversation, you'd have a hard-pressed case to say you didn't know what the law was. But thank you.
The chair recognizes Mr. Manuel to speak for the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I'm going to ask you all to just bear with me. This is going to take just a little bit. Speaker Phelan is going to be nice about this, and I'm not. My community, Jefferson County, Southeast Texas, you all know I love where I'm from. You all don't know the hell that we went through with lies. This bill does not stop you if you are a community grassroots person and you're sitting in your basement and you create a meme and you share it with your followers. You are not subject to this bill. If you are Texas Democratic Party, if you are progressive Democrats, if you are Stop All Rhinos or We Hate Dade Phelan, yeah, guess what? And you put money in that PAC, from that PAC, you need to put your name on it. This is what doesn't make any sense to me. We ask businesses, well, matter of fact, take that back. We mandate that businesses have to tell you what the product is. If not, you owe the consumer money because you lied. Let me also tell you something else that you all don't want to think about. We signed up for this. 150 people in this darn room. But our mothers, our sisters, our brothers, our wives, our children, they didn't sign up for this. You may have asked them, but they didn't sign up for this. They didn't put their name on that paper. Let me tell you what happened in my community. Someone told my speaker, your speaker, whether you voted for him or not, it took one bullet to take him out. Do you know what that meant to his family? Let me tell you also what happened. Someone came to his house one night when he wasn't there because he was knocking on doors, and they were going from neighbor to neighbor pretending to be on his campaign, saying negative things about him, and they were told, do not go next door. That's the Phelan's house. And they went next door anyway and harassed his wife while she was home by herself. And I'm going to tell you this, and I don't care who reports this. I told him, if that had been my wife, I'd have blown both of their kneecaps out. And I hope they're listening, because I would have blown both of your kneecaps out. You would have remembered me for the rest of your damn life. This doesn't make any sense. This is not about liberty, what you all are talking about. You just voted on a bill yesterday on Second Amendment that created a class of people to protect. And you gave it to an unelected body, a school board, or school officials to decide what is and what is not anti-Semitism. So now we're for freedom of speech because it comes to political ads when you want to take somebody out. Well, guess what? You got what you wanted. He's not the speaker anymore. But there are other people in this building who their children, their wives, their husbands, their partners, their grandmothers depend on this damn bill. You don't know what it felt like to hear older people say, I have never seen anything like this in the history of my life. You don't know what it was like for people who supported Covey or supported Speaker Phelan, who said, I don't know if I can go to this place because someone might do me something. The vice chair of the Republican Party in my district had a man, and I don't care what any of you say, any man that runs up on a woman and doesn't have respect, you should get popped too. And I mean that. I don't care what you all say. I don't care about any left-wing groups or right-wing groups. I'm telling you, respect women. If you don't, you know how I feel about you. Ran up to a woman at a meeting to discuss policy and yelled at her. Yelled at her for discussing Republican policies. And I know you all are like, well, damn, you're a Democrat. I am. But I'm also a human being. And you all know I love and respect every one of you, even those of you who we don't agree on 95% of policy. I still think, and I always tell you, you deserve to be here. Your voice deserves to be heard. I stood up for every one of you for every extension. I have never voted for not an extension of time. If it takes us all day and all night, be damned. We ran for this. But don't give me any bull crap and tell me that we need to be distorting people's images, lying to people, changing their names, changing their voices, who they voted for. You all don't know what it felt like to get 2 to 3 different mailers in your district a day and have people terrified to show up to political events. And I'm not talking about Democrats, because I know that's what you all think. I'm talking about Republicans. Let me tell you about my district. My district is not 90+% Democrat. My district is 59 to 60+% Democrat. Very hard for me to lose. But I love my Republicans. I talk to my Republicans, even the ones who don't like anything I vote for, but maybe 2 or 3 things. I respect them. I go to their bars. I go to their events. And I ask them, what do you need? I tell them, I'm not going to be able to vote for everything that you like, and you're going to be disappointed with me sometimes, but I promise you, I can always explain how I voted. But the number one most important thing is, regardless of where you fall in a political party line, I will always work for you. You always have constituent services. You can always call me and tell me you disagree, and you can always ask for a meeting. All this bill says is, if you're gonna lie and you're gonna be a liar, then tell the damn truth. The Bible says right here, I tell you, on the day of judgment, people will give account for every careless word they speak. And I say this, and some of you think it's a joke, but I mean this. Hell is hot, and it's gonna stay hot. And if you can't keep your wicked tongue in your mouth, then prepare for what is Judgment Day. And if you don't believe Judgment Day is real, I promise you to God it's real. Every one of us in here will be on hands and knees shivering before the Lord thy God. Don't make a mockery of this building. If you're not for free speech when it comes to protecting all of us, which is a melting pot, then don't all of a sudden be for free speech when it comes to making sure that our families don't have to deal with bullshit when it comes to what could happen to people. You all, I'm sorry for that language. You all don't understand what we dealt with. And I'm going to say this lastly. I'm not going to even talk about him. I'm going to talk about his wife. That woman donates her time not to black people, white people, Democrats, Mexicans. She donates her time to youth of all races. She stands before a judge and defends them when they're in juvenile court. She doesn't ask for a dime. She doesn't pretend to be black or white or Hispanic. She pretends to be Kim Phelan, a wife, a mother, a child of God, a family member of other people. And every one of you that are sitting up here thinking that this is about you, this is a woman whose life you put at risk, who makes sure that children who have been raped, molested, abused, and neglected don't go to jail, but they get rehabilitation. And that's the kind of woman you had. Lunatics, evil people, non-Americans go to her door. I believe in liberty. I believe in free speech. This isn't the best country, but this is the best country that we have had. And in less than 500 years, we have done a lot of good compared to everybody else in the world that has had thousands of years to get to where we are. Don't make a mockery of our system and try to make this something that it's not. This is not about protecting you and our petty egos. This is about protecting our constituents, our families, and the people who will come after us. And I ask you personally, for my district, for Southeast Texas, as a proud East Texan, vote for this bill and stop the lying. And remember, if you lie, the consequences are something that you can't comprehend, because none of us in here are God. None of us in here are the Messiah. And if you can stand before him today and take a vote and say you don't care who lies because you worry about a little bit of jail time, we put people in jail for lying. We put that executive who had the blood machine, she's in jail for 7 years for lying because she put people's lives at risk. Don't put my constituents' lives at risk. Don't put your constituents' lives at risk. And I'm not going to apologize for how mad I am, because I'm going to tell you, you put us through hell for 6 months. Democrats, Republicans, independents, non-voters, postal workers, poll workers. They deserve so much better than what we did. And we can do the best by correcting this. This has nothing to do with what we talked about. This is someone's political agenda. We deserve better than this. Thank you.
Members, please excuse Ms. Janice Holt on motion of Cecil Bell. Is there any objection? Chair is none, so ordered. Chair recognizes Mr. Gates in opposition.
You know, I sit here and I've listened to the debate, and mine isn't about these extreme examples or whatever. But what does concern me is line 3, it says criminal offense. And on line 8, it says criminal penalty. You know, I own a bunch of properties. I have city inspectors come out. And under city codes, they criminalize everything. Everything's criminalized. I'll have people come up to my managers and say, if you don't open that door with the police officer, we're going to arrest you. With no court order. I'm just concerned. I understand. I don't want false advertising. I've been subject to that at all. But what really concerns me is the criminal offense and the criminal penalty. For something, while you can come up with the far examples, what about small examples? And I'm just bothered by how so much of our society is turning to giving the power to government of criminal penalties and being able to incarcerate someone. That's why I'm voting against the bill.
Ms. Davis, what purpose?
Manuel's remarks on HB 366 be reduced to writing and placed in a journal.
Members, you heard the motion. Is there objection? Chair is none, so ordered. Mr. Toth in opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I'm concerned what this body is doing. I'm concerned at what this body did to our Attorney General last session. And you can smirk all you want to, but this body led an attack on our Attorney General, and we're doing the very same thing with this piece of legislation. In 1988, the courts would have struck down something like this. The courts, when Jerry Falwell was angry at what Hustler had said about him, the courts really clearly, in an 8-0 decision, stated that public officials are open to scrutiny. And no, Hustler did not have to disclose that it was satirical. The courts will strike this down. The TEC should not be an arbiter of truth in language, and we should stand against any time government wants to regulate speech.
Chair recognizes Speaker Phelan to close on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I apologize for the lengthy debate. Certainly didn't expect the emotions. If I raise my voice, I apologize. My wife told me I should never raise my voice. But this is a very serious piece of legislation. Elections are very serious. Elections are permanent. We've seen elections, Ms. Howard, I believe, by one vote. If you don't think a deceptive ad can change one vote, you're mistaken. A deceptive ad could change 366 votes very easily. These are $1 million campaigns now, unfortunately. And a $500 fine, I'm going to speak to the criminal nature of this bill, a $500 fine in a $10 million campaign is a rounding error. It would be the cost of doing business. And I will say I misspoke. There are not 750 outstanding cases in front of the Texas Ethics Commission. There's 2,500 cases before the Ethics Commission. Pardon me, referred to the Attorney General. 2,500 referred to the Attorney General. He has collected on 7% of those. 93% of those cases referred for collection to our AG's office have not been collected. So what is a fine if you don't have to pay it? What is a $500 fine on a $10 million campaign, especially if you don't have to pay it? The Class A misdemeanor is a range of 0 days to 365 days. It's a very common punishment when you're dealing with something as important as an election. Especially an election, I could say, is a stolen election, when in the last 72 hours of a campaign, a video could be released that entirely changes the nature of the electorate going into Election Day. If it has not already happened, it will happen. So I understand the heartburn on the penalties, but it's the only way to get someone's attention on something as serious as our elections here in the state of Texas. I appreciate Mr. Capriglione and Mr. Manuel's wonderful remarks. I don't have to go to church on Sunday. Thank you, Christian. You brought it home today. But I appreciate you reminding folks that there's a human element to elections. There's a human element to lying about elections. And again, this is the first, I hope, of many bills we have this session that takes the elections out of the shadows and puts them back into the voters' hands. And we want integrity in our election. A proponent of election integrity, which I believe the Republican Party platform stipulates, then you support a bill like HB 366. And with that, members, I move passage.
The question occurs on final passage of House Bill 366. This is a record vote. Clerk, ring the bell. Speaker Phelan vote aye. Mr. King voting aye. Ms. Jones voting aye. Mr. Dutton voting aye. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? Being 102 ayes and 40 nays, House Bill 366 is finally passed.